Peaceful Palette Art Lesson Series. I am Noelle Rollins. If it's your first time here, I welcome you. And for everyone who's been following along, thank you for joining me again. So today we are going to work on teeth, how to draw teeth so they don't detract from your artwork. And instead they just add to the overall look. Teeth can be a little tricky. So we're going to go through a little bit on how to do that and keep them accurate, yet not get too heavy on them. So I'm going to be using an 8B pencil and a 2H, an eraser that came with my drawing kit. You can get pencil drawing kits at any arts and crafts store, Walmart, Amazon, anywhere like that for pretty cheap. If you don't have a pencil set, just go ahead and use a regular pencil, whatever you have. And then I'm using a blender and a cotton swab. If you have blenders, they're pretty cheap also at arts and crafts stores. If you don't sweat it and go ahead and use some cotton swabs. So, all right, let's get started on drawing a smiling mouth where teeth are showing. And I'm going to walk you through step by step how to do it. Let's go.
So here I have the reference photo taped to my paper, and I will draw side by side with it so you can see both today. You can set your paper up and then have this video be your reference. So to start off, I am going to start on the upper lip, creating the upper lip line, and just doing this very lightly. We want to make sure we just as light as possible on the paper so we can leave room to make changes. It's very common at this point to have to erase different points and go back, touch up different things. So don't let any of that be discouraging if you find yourself erasing and redrawing. The lighter, the better. So here I'm just showing, I always look for things to reference when I'm just adding new parts onto the art. So the teeth are about the same height as the upper lip, at least at the thicker parts of the upper lip. So that just gives me a general idea to work from as I start to sketch them in. I typically start with whichever tooth is the closest to us as the viewer, so that I can have that one be in the forefront. Pay special attention to how the gums meet the tooth. If you can get the right angle on this and have it come down the proper amount into the tooth in between the teeth, that's going to really set you up for having a more realistic looking gum line. So again, I'm just doing it very lightly here. So in his mouth here, so when you're doing teeth, a few things to look for are if the tooth comes below at the bottom, lower, or higher than the tooth next to it, how the gum line is. If, like this next tooth I'm doing here, if it's kind of slanted to the side as it goes towards the back of the mouth, it will not be as wide as the teeth towards the center of the mouth. You want to pay attention to the shape of the bottom. So as you can see on his front tooth, it's slightly curved at the bottom. If I were to draw that directly straight, it would look not like his. So now I'm going to go in and start drawing some of the teeth to the left of the mouth, left side of the mouth, just so I can get the main 4 teeth accurate before I keep going. I can make sure that I'm spacing them correctly. Where the center of the teeth right there are, I want to make sure that it's lining up with the proper place in the lip above. That the gum lines are, I haven't started them too low or too high, where it still accurately fits what parts are showing from the bottom of the lip. And then start to pay attention to how you draw the bottom here. Like that tooth slightly curves up. And then again, this one curves at the top, and then it's pretty straight and dips below the tooth next to it. So you want to show that. So once you start to see that you have these in place, then you can feel more confident. You can kind of eye, do I have enough room here to still do the other ones? Am I on track with how much space there is left in the mouth? And make adjustments. Sometimes you might see at this point where you didn't draw the mouth wide enough and you have to erase that and just expand it a little bit. So as you can see, I am counting the teeth out, making sure that I show them accurately. Where the shadows begin there, deeper within the cheeks. Today is one of those real life days, you guys, where my son is playing with a friend in the basement. And sometimes you're going to hear them. All right. As I'm sure you all know, it's even in the best intentions to try to find a quiet place to draw, there's still life happening around us. It's just part of it. No worries. So I like in this part of the lip, it becomes pretty easy to see where that lip should go, just in connection to the teeth. You can see, okay, it hits teeth, the second tooth out on each side. So again, just we're keeping our pencil very light. And see how that kind of curves up and then it starts to curve down. So just as I said earlier, very normal. Don't beat yourself up if you say, oh wait, that wasn't quite right. We're going to get it exact how we need it. So this one I'm making just a little bit wider of an opening. I want to make sure it connects at the right tooth. Okay, so that was the outer part of the tooth, not the inner. So that helps me see where it should be. So again, just keep your pencil light. Want to make sure we're not pressing too hard on the pencil. Sometimes when we're concentrating or in a part that we're really trying to get right, we can find ourselves pushing a little harder on the pencil. So I'll keep reminding just to keep everything really light. We can always go back in after, and we will, and shade the areas that we need to. So in the first mouth lesson also we did line drawings. This is also up to this point considered a line drawing. We haven't done any shading yet. We're just simply going through and creating the outlines of the teeth. It's always interesting, different parts of the drawing that become kind of a creative block, where I'm finding myself looking at these teeth as they're going back and like counting them, and then my brain says, what did you just count? And then I count them again, and then I focus on something, then I say, oh, how many teeth were there? Just sometimes things flow easily, and sometimes it just takes a few tries. So we're slowly, as you can see, the mouth is starting to come together now. We can start to have this, you can see just by the way the teeth are that they are, you know, curving around the jaw, the mouth. So they are slightly rounded by the fact that the teeth get narrower and narrower as they go towards the back. The fact that they're layered behind those front teeth starts to give that away as well. Just little tricks here that help imply the order of things and which ones are closer and further away from us, the viewer. So now really lightly going in and filling in these spots between where the teeth meet up, while also defining some of the bottom teeth. Another thing, if someone has like calcium deposits or any like marks on their teeth, unless it's something that is specific that they chose, or it's so obvious that you would be insincere in avoiding it, I never show anything like that. We just keep it focused on the shapes, general shading. You can imply a little bit, but you never want to go over the, overboard in showing something like that. All right, so now let's draw this bottom lip here, and again, we're going to use some little tricks to see about how wide it is, how tall. I like doing some things like this because then I know I just have to fill in the lines between. It kind of centers me, or I have the outer edges and then it's just in between. Because otherwise you can start to do a curve much too big and you end up towards the middle of the mouth and you're way off. So I'm lightly showing some of where the light's reflecting off his lip. Just helping, making sure all of these pieces of the puzzle make sure that we are on track for how things fit together. So as I start to see that, okay, this mouth is starting to be in the right shape, now we can come in with our 8B pencil. And we're going to now do what we did on any shading video. We're going to come in and do the darkest parts. So in this one, if you look at the reference photo, you can see the darkest parts are going to be where it tucks back into the inner cheeks. Right there. So just small circular strokes. Just showing some depth there. When you're doing men's lips, you be just a little aware of how much color you're putting in, like how much deep shading. You want to make them realistic, but you also want to make them look natural, and unless they're wearing some sort of product on their lips, and same for women too, when you're doing natural lips, you just want to be more aware of the color of the lips in contrast to the color of the skin tone around it, compared to the color of the teeth and the shading, and just showing the natural edges of the lips can help with this too, so it doesn't look like they're wearing lipstick or anything like that. Again, working with these soft pencils, I've said this in other videos, but I am barely putting any pressure on this pencil, and it just lays the color down so nice so that it's so much easier to do shading. It'll save you so much work if you're able to get one of these. At any art store, they're just probably a couple dollars or less, or you can get the whole kit for under $10 at many places. If you're able to do it, I encourage you to. You're going to find that just a little bit better supplies that work with you are going to make your drawing experience so much better. So little tiny scribbly marks up and down when I can here. Again, just matching the natural texture of the lips. So you can see the upper lip there has a little bit of shading on that bottom part. So we'll kind of go through and make sure that we have shaded dark enough. So as you can see right now where we're at with shading, those darker lines are still way too dark compared to the rest of the drawing. So that's your clue that more work needs to be done to fill in so we have a better, like we're closing that gap between the lightest and the darkest points in the drawing. So really lightly coming in and shading where the gum line is and where it meets the teeth, where it gets shaded by the upper lip. Those gums kind of wrap around the upper roots of the teeth, as you can see. So it's common to have like a little bit of a shadow, and then they'll highlight where they stick out the furthest over the tooth. They're not perfectly smooth. So I'm getting a little bit darker as I go back here, back into the back corners of the inner mouth. And this part gets almost black. So we'll really get to play that up, which is fun. So it's always good to just stop, take a second, see how everything is fitting together. Now we'll continue on the other side of the mouth here with the same exact thing. Let's go over where the gum line meets the teeth. And those gums also don't just flatly meet the top of the teeth. They stick out a little bit from the teeth. So there's often some shadows there. So just very lightly shading in this area, paying attention to each tooth, each part of the gums above the teeth, making sure that we shade in between the teeth. So at this point, I haven't shaded any of the teeth yet, just the gums. And I like doing the lips and the gums and everything first, if possible, where I can, because like I said before, it'll just show the darker shading so that I can start to see the contrast. Because sometimes if we haven't established the full range that we're going to go with the shading, we might come in too dark on the teeth. And once it's too dark, it's a little bit harder or just more tedious to go back in and erase parts of them. So I always try to save them for last where I can. All right, so just continuing to lightly shade. We're edging that bottom lip. What I'm doing is I'm constantly looking back at the reference photo to see where the highlights are on that lip, so that I can make sure to honor that and leave those lighter. And then also adding and shading where there is shading. It just helps show off how each person smiles a little differently and how the muscles in their mouth work, which is fun. It just makes each smile a little different. So it's always interesting. You just have to trust the process, because if you were to stop right now, that looks like what has happened. But just trust. We're going to keep shading in those lips so that all of that will feel like the proper amount of darkness on them. So now I'm looking again. Okay, the bottom is lighter, but we still have to show that it is indeed a lip and it didn't just drop off there into a nothingness. And as I'm watching this back, doing this voiceover, I would probably have on the bottom left of the lip made that part go out a little bit more. On the lower lip, kind of a little more symmetrical, but that's okay. When you're doing realistic artwork, the goal is always to have it as realistic as possible. But I promise you that every time you do a drawing, you could look back later and see something you could have done different. It's just a never-ending thing that I would just encourage you to just avoid. That's part of what makes art art, is how you were feeling that day when you drew that, what you noticed, what you wanted to call out or accent. That's what makes it different than the person next to you if they were drawing the exact same person in a portrait. So I'm going through here and shading really lightly at the edges of the teeth. So just barely touching. Most of the teeth are going to have nothing on them as we get towards the front of the mouth. You can always come back into it with a really tiny edge of an eraser and make sure that each tooth has the highlight of where the light's hitting it. You can kind of see where I was showing where it's going to be on this front one. And when you are shading on teeth, always go up and down, since that typically any marks on the teeth or anything like that is typically going to be up and down as well, just in the way that they've grown in. So I'm doing as light as possible here with the 2H pencil. I have it very sharp so that I can get these very fine lines very lightly. And you can see, since we shaded the rest of the mouth darker, a little bit of shading here on the teeth still feels very light and bright. If we would have started with shading on the teeth, this would have felt like it was very shaded, and we wouldn't have been able to see that, oh, in contrast, it actually is accurately the right color of darkness. So as I'm going down here, I'm looking at how do the teeth meet the bottom row of teeth? Do they get hidden by the lower lip? Is the edge shown? How much is each tooth shaded? As I go through here, I'm looking at each one of those in the reference and then coming back and making sure that they're accurate in my drawing. So these teeth will just each get darker and darker. While still showing that the teeth are rounded by having the darkest parts where the teeth meet. And the bottom teeth, if you look at the reference photo, are pretty shaded and they're in a shadow by the top teeth. So you can get away with a little bit there of that, but you also, if you go too dark on them, they're going to look like they're rotted. So now if you have a fine blender, you can come in here and just really carefully take that fine edge, and we're going to go over the gum line where it meets the teeth, and we're just kind of blending that together, showing each tooth. You can pause at any point here and just get caught up. And you want to be careful with the blender. If you go over the whole tooth with it, it's going to leave different kind of marks. So I typically tend to try to stay around the outer part of the tooth with it. While also just making sure to accurately capture the shape of the teeth. And smearing in the lip line. And as I fill it in, I'll start kind of going more with the lip line where I can here to smear that. And make sure to darken the whole lip a little bit more. So you can see I'm kind of going in here and saying, oh, actually, I like that a little more rounded. I'm going to pull that a little bit that way with this blender and see if I can work it out a little bit. And you can see now we start to have good contrast between the teeth, the lips. As I get the rest of the face completed in a portrait like this, I might come back afterwards when I see how it fits in with the rest of the features and shade in even a little bit more. These yellow regular skill pencils are great with their erasers. Just an easy way to get a sharp line. Sometimes I'll take a dry paintbrush like that to brush away those little pieces left, so I don't smear it with my hands. Now we're just going to blend that out a little bit more in the lip. Just kind of smearing that color in. This part is just nice and easy. Just allow yourself to really play with it. The more you do this, the more you'll have some natural instincts on how you want it to be. So just allow yourself to make mistakes. You can always come in if you've done it too much or not enough and do it more, or lighten it with an eraser. One of the great things about pencil is you can erase and you can just add more. So it really is a great medium to work with when you're learning to draw the features. It's very forgiving. So I'm just coming back in here with that 8B, and I'm seeing which parts I blended away that really do need now to be re-accented. Just shown. So as we're getting to the end of this mouth, how are we feeling about it, guys? Did you enjoy drawing teeth? Have you drawn them before? Is there any questions you have about drawing teeth? Ask them in the comments and I will come back in and answer them for you. But there we have it, just a general sketch with shading. You can show teeth, the lips, a smile. And you could come back in if you wanted and just double check everything again. Make sure that how all the teeth shapes are together, that it looks proper, how you want it. I'm coming in here with the 2H and just double checking with it very sharp that all the lines look how I want them to. Sometimes when we can take a step back, we can kind of see if things are the look that we want. And if not, we can change it. I mean, the great thing too is, let's just say that you did this and then 6 months down the road, you find this sketch again and you felt like you wanted to update it. You always can do that. Go back in and update a few things or keep it as kind of a time capsule of sorts. That's what's really fun about having a sketchbook is you just turn the page and you do the next one and the next one. And then eventually you can look back and you can see this progress that you've made and how you've started to find your own style. You start to find what you really have enjoyed, what things were challenging for you, and just feel a sense of pride in that. Mouths are so fun to draw and they're so unique for each person. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. I hope you're subscribed so you can see our future drawing lessons that are coming out. We're going to work on drawing a mouth and colored pencil, the basic Crayola 12-pack of colored pencils next, followed by the week after a very highly detailed mouth drawing with professional colored pencils. So I hope you will join us for these future lessons, and you can always look back at the past lessons where we've drawn eyes and noses and just had a lot of fun together. So I hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks for being here. Bye.